Charlie Fogarty is hanging up the cleats.
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
All right, listen, if you hear a combination of the air conditioner and the pouring rain, there's just not much we can do about it in our wonderful studio. I'll tell you, we record these programs in the early afternoon, and I empathize for anybody that, or with anybody that had to travel around here. I had a meeting across town to get over here to East Providence, and it took me double the time and both hands on the steering wheel. So when it rains, it pours around here, literally. Hope you were okay, and hopefully the infrastructure has survived the flash flooding that we saw this afternoon. Anybody's guess. Glad to have you aboard. Charles Fogarty, a former lieutenant governor and director of elderly affairs, is retiring, and I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. Something tells me this isn't the last we've heard of Charlie Fogarty. But at least from a professional and bureaucratic point of view, he is hanging up his governmental cleats, and it's always great to share time with him. And we shall, in a few minutes, speak with Charlie and talk about his career, his perspective on the political world, and all that kind of stuff. So stay with us for that. In the meantime, a lot of things happening in Washington. Let me see if I can get these things on. SCOTUS blow to labor unions. Yeah, yes and no. Here's the latest if you didn't follow the details of it.
Local unions representing people from healthcare officials to public safety workers reacting to the Supreme Court ruling Wednesday.
Thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, it's not for a very positive announcement.
The decision overturns longtime regulation, previously allowing states to require public employees to pay union dues, even if the workers choose not to join them. Now, those people have the choice to pay or not.
You know, people want to be free riders and take advantage of other people and, you know, not pay their fair share.
The Rhode Island American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations says, unfortunately, they saw this coming.
We never made progress by being nice or by sitting around and accepting the status quo.
The Supreme Court justices ultimately ruled the old law violated the First Amendment. Attorney General Peter Kilmartin also weighed in, expressing disappointment, sending Eyewitness News a statement that reads in part, "It will curtail the ability for public employees to obtain fair wages and benefits. These workers are our neighbors, our teachers, police officers, and firefighters, all of whom work hard every day serving our communities and contributing to our quality of life."
Yeah, it makes sense that the Attorney General will come off the milk carton and weigh in the world of hackdom. When's the last time he actually stood up, you know, on an independent basis and actually talked about crime fighting in this state? I mean, this guy, the greatest thing about the elections of 2018 is that they will rid us of Peter Kilmartin, number one. I mean, the kind of, it's politically incorrect to say this, but the political Tourette's that he has, where he just kind of spits up things out of nowhere is beyond my even understanding. But here's the thing about the unions. Look, I understand why the Supreme Court made this decision. Frankly, I don't agree with it either. I think that, look, if you're in a job where the union has to represent exclusively, you ought to pay your dues. Doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that goes on. Too many people don't disagree publicly with their unions, and you know that's, I think, a problem. But George Nee, the AFL-CIO boss there, he is classic old school. You know, George, you know what you're going to have to do as a union leader? You're going to have to market the union to employees as a benefit, as opposed to scolding, threatening, and suggesting that some people are just trying to freeload. That is an old-time disposition. You couldn't brand a message if it hit you in the square in the head. You know, for people who are on the fence about whether they want to play dues, do you think they're going to be excited by that disposition? The union leadership is its own worst enemy in this state. In the meantime, Justice Kennedy is retiring, and that is going to create a free-for-all in this country.
We have to pick one that's going to be there for 40 years, 45 years.
The president says he'll pick from a list of 25 candidates to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy, who announced his retirement after more than 30 years on the bench. Kennedy was known as the court's swing vote. He often sided with conservatives, but also joined liberals in several key rulings. President Trump is expected to pick someone who will move the court more firmly to the right.
You know, there's so many elements go into the making of a great justice.
Democrats still angry that Senate Republicans blocked President Obama's Supreme Court nominee before the 2016 election on the grounds that voters should have a say, want the same deal now.
Why should a midterm election be any less important than a presidential election? Leader McConnell is simply engaging in hypocrisy.
But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says this situation is much different.
We're right in the middle of this president's very first term. To my knowledge, nobody on either side has ever suggested, before yesterday, that the Senate should only process Supreme Court nominations in odd-numbered years.
He says the Senate will vote on Kennedy's replacement in the fall.
Look, elections matter. Elections matter. You can't time when the justice is going to leave, and the Democrats know that they're one or two short here. You know what? There'll be other vacancies after this midterm election and possibly after 2020. This is a pivotal one, though, no doubt. And, you know, to the victor goes the spoils. It's going to be a brutal, brutal battle in this country, and it's only going to create a bigger space between those over here and those over here. We're going through a very turbulent time in our democracy right now. But I understand why the Senate president isn't going to, you know, give up the vote. It's like, come on, man. Who's kidding who here? At home, this was an interesting post-Republican convention development. Of course, the Republicans were fighting in their own telephone booth last night. Bobby Nardolillo, the headline, he pulls out of the Senate race, even though, understandably, I'm told that it was a little closer than even I thought it would be in terms of the party players when it comes to Bob Flanders and Nardolillo. So former State Supreme Court Justice Bob Flanders will be alone in the Republican primary, not having to waste his resources in his effort to unseat Sheldon Whitehouse, which, by the way, will be an incredible upset. Flanders is blue chip timber, but has been quiet, way too quiet, has a lot of name recognition to build up, is really not set up to be able to make a blue chip effort, and it's going to take everything plus the kitchen sink to get close to Sheldon Whitehouse in this state. So I don't know who's kidding who here. You know, Bob's a wonderful guy, but there seems to be something missing in terms of his understanding about what it takes to win a race like this. I wonder if Charlie Fogarty will have something to say about that when I have him join us. By the way, here's the field. The Republicans, well, here's the Democrats. The Democratic endorsements, Sheldon Whitehouse, obviously Governor Raimondo, Lieutenant Governor McKee, all got the endorsements of the party. It all went, everything is true to form. Everybody's an incumbent. Everybody is, you know, part of the party. On the Republican side, Flanders gets the endorsement from his own party. Mayor Fung, running for the second time, gets that endorsement. And they couldn't muster up enough votes either way for an endorsement on the Lieutenant Governor's side. And then it's like who, and who. Although Michael Riley's a pretty sharp guy with the numbers, but he's got no political traction. So it's always kind of that way around here. And there you have it. You know, Fung, by the way, getting the endorsement is understandable. Patricia Morgan, the state rep, very upset. She's like, oh, you know, it's corrupt, it's fixed, which is what the second place player always says when it comes to party endorsements. But Fung, in as much as I think he's grown as a candidate, I think is a political dead man walking here with this lease problem and the in-kind contributions and the Board of Elections investigation, the timing of which will determine whether he is actually or not. Headline here, he's all done. He's hanging up his cleats. So we figure we bring him over here. You are retiring tomorrow?
Tomorrow, my last day.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's it feel? Or should I ask you 2 days from now? How's it feel? You wake up in the morning and go, where am I going?
It feels a little weird. No, I know what I'm doing, but it feels a little funny to be kind of boxing things up and moving on.
What are you doing?
Well, Dan, I teach part-time at Johnson & Wales, so in the fall I'll be teaching 3 classes there.
Okay.
And I'm also going to do some volunteer work. I've kind of, you know, in this stage of my life, going to do the third. A third work, third volunteering, third personal development. So I've already signed up.
Personal development.
You know, like fun things and travel and
nice.
learning Spanish and so forth. So next week I'll be starting a Meals on Wheels route. I signed up for that right away. I was on with you back in the fall on our ship counselors. I've taken the test. I've certified as a ship counselor, so I'll be doing that. And I'll be doing some.
But that's not sailing ships. That is the program.
Senior Health Insurance Assistance Program that helps Medicare folks pick their things. And I'm going to do something with the church, and so we'll see what happens. But I want to stay busy, and that's what I'm going to do.
Habla español?
No, not yet. That's why I want to do that.
Yeah, well, join me. Maybe you and I will go to classes together, because it has been my now, I don't know, 15-year resolution to become fluent in Espanol, and I still haven't. It's like I know once I start, I'll dive in, but it takes a commitment, especially when we're this old.
I went to Catholic school, so I had French from first grade through the high school. So French is not that popular here anymore. And then when I went to college, I took Russian. So obviously, if I think today would say take Spanish and Chinese is the way to do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me get the big question out first. No political future?
No, I was really. I have been very fortunate in my life to have had many opportunities to serve, and I've worked hard and done my best. But no, that is behind me.
For sure.
For sure. Yeah. I think the world has moved on, and so have I.
I know. I'll tell you though, there was some old day fun chasing Charlie around in his last campaign, and we've had some rough times and some good times.
We always had a good relationship. I'll never forget when you first came to the market. I was a very active lieutenant governor, as you know. I was out doing things, programs and bills and so forth, and you nicknamed me Charlie Tuba all the time because I was on TV all the time. So.
You remember Charlie Tuna? But he was on television so much, I called him Charlie Tuba, which he didn't like very much. Now he's grown to laugh at it.
Of course,
but,
as I get older,
real time.
With age comes wisdom.
All right, when we come back, we'll get some insight from Charlie as to what he sees in government and the political scene. Stay with us. Not a chance. All right, so there's some old pictures. I mean, it's not like you're dead, for crying out loud, but everybody likes to take a little look back. And, a little elbow rubbing.
That's when I told Gorbachev, tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev.
Exactly.
And Reagan picked up the line, and that was the end of it.
Doggone it. You hate it when you get ripped off like that, don't you?
I do.
Before we get into the politics and what you've learned about all that, tell me what the transition was like, going into the bureaucracy and having two important state jobs, and the idea that people say, you know what, these people in government, they get elected, they take care of themselves, they roll people into executive positions. I thought your appointments were legitimate because you've always been a wonky guy.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly very proud of the work that I did both at DLT and also at DEA. But I think the experience for me was that I had a much clearer grasp of how things worked and how they got done. When you're at the State House, and I had been there as a senator, as lieutenant governor, you try to stay informed, you touch base with folks, you look at the systems, but sometimes you think you have all the answers. And what works at the State House, or what you think works, in reality doesn't always work. So afterwards, I kind of laughed at some of my other colleagues. I told them that, look, in the end, you get to make the decisions, but call us first. We'll tell you how to get to where you want or why it won't work. And if I had my druthers, I'd say anybody that's going to serve in office at the state level should serve a month or two as a department director to see what really happens.
Well, I think that's brilliant. Yesterday in that seat was Steve Brown from the ACLU when we were talking about Kristen's Law, which was controversially passed in the legislature this year, modified from its original intent, which was if I sell you drugs and you die, I go to jail for life. Now, a judge could send me to jail for life depending on how the case and the circumstances play out. But I've had medical professionals and sociologists here who say this is counterintuitive, counterproductive. And I asked him the question, why is it that there seems to be often so much separation between those who make decisions on laws and those who actually know what the heck the whole situation is all about? Now, they don't always get it wrong. Public hearings can inform, but oftentimes there's so much intel on the ground for whatever concern, issue, specialization, crises exists, and there's a big gap. Do you agree?
I agree. I think, first of all,
are you seeing examples of that?
I think most folks at the State House do want to make a difference. So they look at, here's a problem, what are some innovative ideas from other states? People come to them and say, we need to do this. They look at the facts. But sometimes you need to go beyond just a report. You really look to need, how does the system work now, and will this really have a positive impact? I know I did. I mean, I thought when I was at the State House, I had all the answers on healthcare or senior issues and so forth, and I tried to do my best. Again, when you get into the field, you realize things don't always work that way. And now, if I had to do it again, I would do things differently. I think that's just the way the system operates.
Tell me about this last role you've had in terms of you were at Labor and Training, and then you were at Elderly Affairs. Which was more rewarding, by the way?
They were both rewarding in their own right. DLT, obviously, I was in there when the unemployment rate was 11.4%,
right,
and people were screaming about unemployment benefits. So that was literally every day was a crisis. Right. But I kind of loved that.
We'd have these little interviews with Charlie. Well, Dan, the picture's getting better. We're down at 10.8.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I remember when we got under 10, that was a big deal. So,
right.
But again, and elderly affairs, obviously issues that are important because Rhode Island is a super aging state. So how do we build a network of services that keep people independent? You know, my kind of mantra as DEA director was we want to focus on empowering older Rhode Islanders. We want to focus on preserving people's independence as long as possible and enriching lives. So we've tried to focus on building up those programs there. And fortunately, Governor Raimondo, for the first governor in quite a while, has actually put increased resources for the seniors. You know, back in 2007, the budget, for instance, for DEA was more than twice what it is today. There was a lot of cutbacks because of the economy, but the governor's put in doubling the funding for Meals on Wheels. We've increased funding now for senior services and communities to help cities and towns deal with those issues, put additional dollars in to help with respite care for families taking care of their loved ones. So we're now making some tangible commitments to build up that infrastructure that'll allow people to age in place for as long as possible.
We're so old that, fill in the blank, we're old here.
We're so old that we're wise beyond belief, and we can, I think, our population is aging faster than the national level. We actually have the highest per capita population over 85. That's the fastest growing population. And what has happened is that
good and bad news.
Yes, right? The good news is yes, all those
right,
getting older. But our systems haven't caught up with that. In some ways, we're still stuck in the 70s and 80s in terms of what we do and offer. And I think one of the big challenges coming forward is going to be how do we provide services to the baby boomers who are still active and healthy, don't think of themselves as seniors, but how do we ensure that they continue to contribute to the Rhode Island economy, to our culture and civic events, and then have those services they need as they age? Because baby boomers speak up when they don't like something, they tell you about it. And right now we're kind of in that transition of what that's going to look like.
All right, we'll get a little discussion on what the political environment looks like. I'll get something good out of them. I'll be right back. Self-energizing. You're a longtime Democrat. You're
from a Republican town, by the way.
Huh? From a Republican town,
yes,
out there in Situate?
Gloucester.
Gloucester. Isn't that the same place?
No, it's Gloucester. They're all wonderful places, but Gloucester's the best.
Gloucester's next to Foster, right?
Above Foster.
Oh, gosh. Route 44, man. It's just that and Route 6, which might be the worst road in America, yes, by the way, driving out there. You never did anything about that, doggone it.
I wasn't, talk to LVD about that.
Talk to LVD about a lot of things. But as a veteran Democrat, listen, you're one of those guys, I'm guessing, that fits in the mold of, traditional, social values are pretty conservative, although your politics socially are not very conservative, I'm sure, but your value, and the old-fashioned, somewhat economically conservative. There's a kind of an old guarded Democrat in this state, and this new movement, a progressive. What do you forecast is this evolving, developing civil war inside the Democratic Party nationally and here?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a civil war. I think there's going to be skirmishes, but I think that in the long run it's healthy. Because what I like to see is a younger generation taking an active interest in what's going to happen because their future's at stake. I may not always agree with them, they may not always agree with me, but I think that discussion and tension is healthy as long as it leads to something productive.
Yeah, but don't you
and in the long run, it works. Now, in the short term, you're going to have issues where you had in New York or some other where folks who may have been doing a good job up to this point suddenly get ousted for.
Yeah, Crowley in New York gets ousted by this 28-year-old socialist, self-branded Democratic socialist buzzsaw. There are a lot of people, a lot of Democrats watching this show who are very nervous about fiscal responsibility in the midst of this whole debate. Are you?
Yes, I think, look, I firmly believe that we have to make Rhode Island a place where businesses can grow and thrive. But that doesn't mean that we bow down to the altar of business. Remember, the market is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. So you've got to have, it's a two-way street. So you want to provide opportunities for people to grow and expand their business, but then there's expectation that they're going to employ people at decent wages, that they're going to be contributing to the benefit of the community, and that we have services in place for those people, for whatever reason, who aren't able to participate in that. There's that balance that we have there. And sometimes we go too far either way. We focus too much on the services and neglect creating healthy economic environment, and sometimes we focus too much on the economic environment and forget about the people who it's supposed to serve.
What do you think is going to happen this election season?
In Rhode Island?
Yeah, is the governor going to get a good challenge from the former Secretary of State, Matt Brown? And will Regenberg give McKee a good hard run?
I know them well. I served with Matt Brown when he was Secretary of State. I like Matt. I'm still puzzled as to his reason for popping in all of a sudden. You may not like some of the things Governor Raimondo's done, but she's got to be one of the more consequential governors we've had in terms of tackling some tough challenges. And I think if you look at what's happened economically, the number of jobs, companies that never would have given two shakes about Rhode Island coming in and looking and investing and making decisions there, you look at all those metrics, things are starting to move in the right direction. I think you want to continue to build on that. I think she's going to have that case before not only the Democratic voters but the Rhode Island voters, and I think she's going to be successful.
The lieutenant governor's race might be quite a bellwether in terms of this whole Democratic shakeup.
Again, Aaron Regenberg, bright guy, very ambitious and young, and I think no one should take anything for granted there. Now all of a sudden I think people are going to focus on the office of lieutenant governor, not just what you do as lieutenant governor, but as I've always said, what's the most important function? Being ready on day one to step in to be governor. And for the viewers back home, it happens a lot more than you would think. Not here in Rhode Island recently, but it's happened twice in Massachusetts in my time in office.
Does that lead you to have an opinion as to who? You making a recommendation or endorsement there?
Certainly I support Dan McKee. I think he's done a good job as lieutenant governor. And again, I think the question that I would ask is who's ready on day one to step in to run a $9.5 billion corporation with 14,000 employees at a challenging time?
Got 30 seconds. It's not like your final swan song. We'll have you back for your thoughts.
Then I can really be retired. I'm still on state payroll
now. What's your 20-second message to the constituents that you've served electedly and administratively?
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunities. I've been very blessed to have a number of opportunities to serve the public in a variety of ways. It's been the thrill of a life, and I'm still going to remain committed to community service through volunteer efforts, and I want to encourage folks not to give up. And for candidates, especially young candidates, come forward. Let's really help change the face of Rhode Island and make it a great place again.
All right. I may jump into that Spanish class with them.
All right.
Congratulations.
Adios.
Well done. Final word when we come back. We're going to lighten up tomorrow night. Steve Gordon is a renowned high school athletics coach, nationally known for his wrestling expertise, tutelage, and the like, and a fun guy. He'll be here tomorrow night to talk about what it's like to coach kids these days at all. See you on the radio, too, at 3 until 6 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.